we're going to talk about something about pleading. It's very important. When the Lord pleads, he does so in three categories. One is when he pleads against someone, right? Then he will plead for someone. Okay? Then he pleads on a global scope. Three different types of pleadings. Let me show you what they look like, because when people are in error, or if you're under assault, the Lord is kind, and he will plead on your behalf a lot of times. And you may not know this, which is why it's very important. You don't take vengeance into your own hands. You don't do that. That you should never do that, because that interferes with the Lord's work. Job knew something about the Lord's pleading. But it says this, and by the way, if you look at our nation, and if you look at the world, period, with iniquity, that's going to give you a big clue about some things. But listen to this. A noise shall come even to the ends of the earth, for the Lord hath a controversy with the nations. He will plead with all flesh. He will give them that are wicked the sword to the sword, saith the Lord. Now that's when he pleads with the nations, right? He's going to plead with them. He said, I will also gather all nations and will bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. So that's a national pleading. But look at the details of his pleading. Are you really ready for this? This is God pleading, Ezekiel 38:22. He says, and I will plead against him with pestilence, with blood. I will rain upon him and upon his bands and upon the many people that are with him, an overflowing rain and great hailstones, fire and brimstone. Okay, that's not good, is it? So when God pleads, he said he will plead against him. He will plead against him. Well, how is he doing this? And this is when iniquity is rising in certain areas, God begins to plead. And if you look at the conditions of the globe as iniquity rises, so do a specific set of natural disasters rise, like the rains. Like the rains. Somebody says, the valley of Jehoshaphat, what is this? What is the meaning spiritually? Well, if you think about it, Israel, right? Israel. And the valley of Jehoshaphat is that settlement land around Israel. It literally surrounds Israel. The valley of Jehoshaphat is also a valley. It's also a place of meditation. A hill is a place of power. A valley is a place where you contemplate, where you meditate, where you think about it. That's what a valley is. In the Bible, some people are in valleys, which means they are making a decision, and that's where God will plead with a person. Normally that happens in our lives when we're attempting to make up our minds and ready to commit to something, but we haven't committed to it. So the Lord begins to plead with us likewise. Then we either step to his mountain or we become something else, right? Normally that happens. In the end times, the Lord all nations will be in the valley of Jehoshaphat. He will call all of them down there. That has both a physical and spiritual overtone to it. And the Lord said he would utterly destroy all the armies of the earth. That's exactly what he said. How is this going to happen? This is when God directly intervenes after the beast has reigned for a specific amount of time. God will himself begin to do things on the earth, and that's when Jerusalem becomes a cup of trembling, which is why it speaks about Gog Magog at the very end of Revelation, a fulfillment. Right? Not the beginning of, but just the fulfillment of that Gog Magog prophecy. That's the fulfillment of it, not the beginning of it, the fulfillment of it. That's in my opinion. Okay? All right? So a valley is a place of thought, a place of indecision, a place where you start making up your mind about a great many things. But a hill or a mountain is a position you have taken. Right? As a position you have taken. So that now there are 7 mountains surrounding Israel. These are positions taken around Israel, and they match perfectly against the ideologies of those who have indignation against the holy covenant of which God will allow them to overtake Israel. He already said so. I know people don't like that prophecy, right? But please don't halfway read prophecy. For the good side, you're going to be upset when the reality it is important that this takes place. And how can I sit here and say it's important that that take place? Because the Jews in Israel do not believe in Jesus of Nazareth. When they are trampled underfoot for 42 months, 3.5 years, that's going to cause people to rethink quite a few things. It will. It's going to purge out those of violence and everything else, because God said those of war, those who are of war, they're going to die by war. They're going to die by the sword. God will keep a specific amount to them. And those people he keeps, they're going to be refined. Many of them will fall who have understanding. Right? We read that the other day. Those that do know their God will be strong to exploits. Right? Many that are teaching understanding and all this, they're going to do that. But it said they're going to fall. They're going to be jailed. They're going to be burned with fire, right? So, and that is to purge them, to make them white. So they will eventually be with Christ Jesus in eternity. They will believe. The Lord will keep them, but he's going to purge them. And sure enough, you can see those echoes in Isaiah 5. The purging of his vineyard, his beautiful vineyard that he loves. And we also saw the other day in Scripture where God blinded Israel so that the number of the Gentiles could be fulfilled, could come in. And as soon as that number is fulfilled, he's going to open the eyes of the Jews in Israel. So the short answer is right now, they don't accept Yeshua HaMashiach right now. They don't. They're still looking for him, right? Which is why they will have that temple. They have been practicing mock sacrifices, right? They did that back in, they had a mock sacrifice not too long ago, I believe. But they don't accept Yeshua, but they will. Because the Bible says, we read this more than a few times, that when the Lord comes back, they'll say, who put those holes in your hands? And Jesus will say, my friends did this to me. See, and at the end of that, Jesus said, they will be my people and I will be their God. So they will eventually be called back to the fold. They will. Now we're talking about the Jews. The Jewish people. There's a large Jewish establishment. I'm telling you now, they do not, if you start talking about the Messiah, they will hit you in the head with a brick. They get violent when you start talking about, they get angry when you start talking about the Messiah. But the Lord made them that way. It doesn't mean they're totally rejected. That's not what it means. Isn't that something? All these people who think they're rejected because they don't believe in the Messiah, they haven't read the fullness of the Bible. Because the Lord's calling all of his children home in the last days. All of them. Not some, all of them. All of them will believe. All of them will be delivered. All of them will be secure. Every single last one of them. And you know what that means? That means they're actually found in the book of life. That's what it means. They're found in the book of life. It's just not fulfilled yet that they turn over. Now, when the number of Gentiles is fulfilled, God will open the eyes of the Jews, right? He'll open the eyes. In Romans 11, it states that clearly, that they're blind until a number of the Gentiles come in. That's what's in Romans 11. So it's a beautiful plan, but for those who are steeped in academia trying to divine the word of truth by some sort of concept in the world, they'll never see the truth. That's why you hear a lot of ministers talking about this giant revival taking place. But there's got to be a bigger word for it, because to me it's much more than a revival. It's something the world has never seen before. The world has never seen what's about to happen. They have never seen it. A revival is what people have seen before. What's about to happen is what people have never seen before. Because no one's alive now that was alive way back then. That's the former, and the latter rain moderately. That's something different. I mean, in former times, you had the former rain, right? Those in the latter times had the latter rain. But who had both? Nobody. The latter rain has been coming down. That is those who respond to the call of Christ. But to have the former and the latter moderately, that means in abundance. That means continuously in abundance. Oh my, nobody has ever seen that before. A different type of gathering is about to take place. And if you think really hard, in many cases when these gatherings have taken place in the past, it was absent the power. It was. You saw power exercised in sporadic areas over sporadic periods of time. No, but this is going to be on a whole new level. Whole new level. It reminds me of that dream about that island and the storm that came. And people were so scared they ran from the island, not knowing that I wasn't able to escape off the island because I'm not in the habit of running. And when I finally did, I thought about it. I couldn't get off the island. Every step of the way, it was scary every step of the way, but I could see that Satan was trying to bait those who were left on that island. He was trying to bait them into utilizing concepts of the world in a spiritual fight. And I remember pleading with them, saying, don't do that. Don't do it. Because this one guy was possessed and he killed a woman. And this one guy who was armed with a weapon was going to shoot him. I said, that's exactly what Satan wants you to do. Because if you shoot him, you're going to open yourself up for Satan's full attack. He cannot touch you if you stay within the bounds of Christ. But if you kill, he's going to tear you to shreds. See, in these end times, and one of the things that came out was this: Satan will attempt to bait many Christians into utilizing satanic weapons. A satanic weapon is they are the disobedient things with God. For example, the Lord said, vengeance is mine. So if you pay somebody back, that's a satanic weapon. Think about it. That's a satanic weapon. And if you pay somebody back, Satan will then, because you just stepped out of grace into his territory, he can tear you up in certain areas of your life. If you accuse your brethren, you have stepped into Satan's territory. And if you do that in this time, Satan can tear your life into pieces in certain areas. This is what he wants to do. He wants you to utilize his weapons. He wants you to step out of obedience back into the world, to be just like those who are in politics. He wants you to believe that stuff is harmless. It's the right way to go so he can tear you to pieces. He's trying to bait you into reacting. And if you react, the only way you can do so is with one of his weapons, a concept he established. See, because it's very clear, God gave a way that we are to live. Satan sought to corrupt that way of life. Men can only choose God's way or Satan's way. And any way you choose outside of the living God is Satan's way. There is no gray area. And when you start utilizing the ways of Satan, Satan can tear you to pieces in certain areas. Even Jesus said that. What do you think the lesson of Sodom and Gomorrah was? When you walk away from sin, don't you turn back into it. You're going to pay a price, period. Our pursuance of the Messiah should be at all levels of our lives. Mentally, spiritually, physically. I mean all levels of our lives for us. We don't mandate that on anybody. Even that is satanic, because when you mandate your ways upon another, you offend them. That's what you provoke them and offend them purposely. You can't do that either. Don't make somebody else keep your standards. That is a way of the world. That is a way of oppression. Don't do it. That's like cleanliness standards, right? I wouldn't expect anybody to keep my standards of cleanliness. I don't. I would not do that, right? Because I told you guys this. Have you ever heard of the term neat freak? Right, somebody who's just, they have an obsessive behavior about things being in proper positions, this, that, and the other. No dust anywhere. Everything has to be decent and in order all the time. That would be me. But I never impose that upon another, which means a child could walk into the environment and tear the place up. I could ignore the mess and love the child because I'll put it right back to the way it was. I'll never put that on somebody else and bring their day down because they ruined my vision of something I set up. I make things the way I make them for the sake of other folks to enjoy. How about that? I'm sure I'm not the only one. You fix up things so to be pleasing to somebody else's eye. I do the same thing, right? But don't let Satan bait you into utilizing his weapons, because when you don't do that, your whole life changes today. If all of you would look into your lives, throw down all this, all your stance and everything else, throw it away. Look at your lives and ask yourself something. Have you been doing things outside of the way our Father gave to us? Specifically, the way Jesus gave to you. First of all, he said, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Second, Satan is the accuser of the brethren. Think about that. So if you're talking about somebody in a negative way, that's utilizing a satanic mouth, a satanic tool. That's not bound in holiness. If you stop and say, I'm not going to accuse a soul of anything, you get into that practice, your life is going to begin to change. What you'll find is Satan cannot come into your life and mess things up. How many of you something happens every single week? It seems like something outside of your control happens every single week. Huh? How many have something? You think you have finally reached a point something falls apart. How many have this happen on just every single week? If you want that out of your life, because I'll tell you right now, I don't have surprises. I'm telling you, I do not have surprises. Why? Because it's not oppressive, it's not irritating, it's not aggravating or anything. It's just something Satan does, and I recognize it as such. And then what did the Lord do? We came back, and it was even stronger than it was before. That's how the Lord works. I don't have surprises. I don't get those problems that just zap me, right? And I don't know what to do. I don't get those problems. I found out a long time ago that I was causing that upon myself. That was from my own doings. Because I do good for a while, and then all of a sudden an accusation would come out of my mouth. Something unholy would be spoken out of my mouth. Now, when I say unholy, it could be maybe I've talked about somebody else on television and criticized this individual, and I don't even know them. I have no right to criticize somebody I don't know. And if I'm going to speak something in truth, how in the world can I assume that anybody is a specific way if I don't know them? So if I'm not in relationship with someone, I don't speak about those people. When I cut that out, everything changed. It was almost like Satan could not get to me anymore. He just couldn't touch me. Before, I almost got to the point where I said, what's the use in perfecting this, that, and the other? It's just going to blow up if I do it. But when I changed some things in me, and I stepped into obedience and stopped doing those things that the Lord said, don't do, everything changed. It's that way to this day, to this very day. I'm very grateful for that, because it takes, when the Lord opens your eyes to these things, right? You know what you're really doing? You're doing nothing else but surrendering everything unto the Lord. You're saying, you are King and Lord. I am just part of your creation. I do not know what you know. See, because if you don't do that, you can easily be provoked into trying to prove something to somebody else, and that's how iniquitous things begin. Right? To try and express your knowledge above somebody else's. That's a bait thing. That's how people get baited into doing things. And if you notice, I don't compare your knowledge with anybody else's. I don't compare my knowledge with anybody else's. I don't do that. I'm responsible with this platform the Lord gave me, which means with those things I know, I must speak. I'm bound by that. But I will not sit there and say, well, you don't know what you're talking about. I don't say that. I like to clarify. I like to help people. Sometimes it's accepted, sometimes not. But this is a house, and if somebody comes to this house and they don't like correction, right, they probably don't need to be at this house, right? But my correction is not correction. It's more like a suggestion. Hey, consider this, right? Consider that. It's funny. In a lot of cases, we look at the world and we say, you know, if this person would change this, if that person would change that, everything would be okay. No, but the truth is, if we would change ourselves, our lives would change just like Jesus said they would. A simple prayer to ask the Lord to have revealed to you those areas of pride. That'll begin a journey of correction. You would do well to have in your life. I would do well to continue to have in my life, because I don't like pride at all. Especially since it's written in the Word of God that God resists the proud. And if God resists the proud, I don't want to be away from the Almighty. I want to be with the Almighty. Right? But here's the kicker. You are better than me. You're above me. So far above me. If that were not so, I would not be speaking to you. You would be speaking to me. That means you're so far above me, which means your relationship can be something I could never hope to obtain. How do you like that? Okay, questions. Here we go. So I hope I answered that one, right? Especially about the people being mad at God. Because that's something that there is no flat answer for that for all people. That takes self-examination. That takes prayer. That takes sometimes supplication. It depends on your love for that vessel. I tell you one thing, I would never stop praying for that individual. Never. See, with me, unless a person renounces Christ, they're not done yet. Do you guys get that? Until they renounce Christ, if they renounce Jesus Christ, then there's nothing else I can do. But if they have not renounced Jesus Christ, there's an opportunity. I'll not count them out. I'll never do that. I think as a consequence of that, the Lord does not count me out. And it goes back to the old adage, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So whatever you don't like people doing in your life, don't sow it into somebody else's life. And you'll find that people won't do it to you either. And if anybody does do it, I tell you, it holds no power. You won't even flinch by it, right? So you're not going to be upset because of somebody's comment. Any of those things, because the words will have no power anymore. You think we have a right to criticize anyone because we don't know how things when we do? All right, let me give you an example of something about criticizing, right? What does it do? What does criticizing somebody do? What does it do? If I criticize somebody on television, does any good come from that? Anything holy come from that? No, it doesn't. Even if I'm right, does any good come from that? If somebody were a thief and I say, you know, that person's a thief, and somebody else said, yeah, does any good come from that? No, it doesn't. But what am I doing that the Lord told us never to do? That's called tale bearing. We're not to be tale bearers. We're not to carry news about one person to another person. We're not spies either. But we're certainly not tale bearers. All right? Part of society today is based upon gossip. It really is based upon gossip. What somebody heard. Right? That's most of the communications today are based on what somebody heard. They're not really based on any factual thing. Like this UFO topic is based on what somebody heard and what somebody thought they heard, what somebody heard somebody else say that somebody else took a picture of and they thought they saw it. It's based upon this grapevine type of structure, right? What good has come of it? Nothing. Not one thing has come about from it. Not one good thing. When a person is doing wrong, do you not know that the Lord said everybody knows right from wrong? God said this. God said everybody knows right from wrong. He already said it. He already said it. Right? Now, when your brother or your sister, here's the difference, because a lot of people say, well, the Bible says you got to tell somebody where they're making a mistake. No. You go to your brother and you talk to your brother. But see, when you go to your brother, you're also in relationship with that person. You don't go to a stranger you don't know nothing about. You have no relationship with that person and attempt to tell them that they're messing up their entire lives. You will provoke them to wrath. You correct those you love. That's why the Lord said, go to your brother. He didn't say go to the stranger and warn him. He said, if you have one of your brothers who are doing something they shouldn't be doing, then go to that brother. Warn that brother. That's what he said. He didn't say go to your next door neighbor's house, invade their family, and tell them what to do. That's not what he said. He said go to your brother. You have to be in relationship with a person to correct him effectively. And somebody says, well, what if a person is cutting up and I see him cutting up? I don't know him. Well, the Lord's going to send them somebody they do know. You got to get it in your minds that somebody else's salvation does not need to come through. Listen, God doesn't need us. He loves us. That's a big difference. He didn't need me. He didn't need you either. He loves us. I can be replaced just like you can. He does not need us. He loves us. God can do better without me. Do you guys understand that? But he loves us. He loves us. We have to understand that, because sometimes we act like God needs us. He didn't need us. He loves us. He loves us. Some people in their families, they say, well, my family won't listen to a word I have to say. And they get upset about it. Nobody should ever get upset. See, in my life, it doesn't matter who they hear it from. It only matters that they hear and accept it. I'll get more than excited if a stranger came and they believed the stranger over me. I would still get excited because they believe. But see, I know that some people are not like that. If a stranger came and told their family something, they would get angry and say, well, I've been saying that for years and you guys didn't listen to me. And they would cross their arms and get mad. That's selfishness. And you have to put yourself in check. And you have to search yourself out for this. Because a lot of people are like that. They want people to believe what they have to say. I get excited for other ministers when listen, I can talk to somebody until I'm blue in the face, and they are too. They can reject every word I'm saying. And then somebody else can say the exact same thing and they can receive it. Do you not know I'm full of joy? I'm full of joy. I'm full of joy. I never get jealous. There's no jealousy in me because it's not my word. All I can tell you is this. I know where the doctor is. And I see a lot of sick people out there. And I try to tell them where the doctor is. That's all. So if they don't want to hear from me, so long as they hear from somebody and get to the doctor, I'm good to go. Right? But see, a lot of people, they want their name in headlines. They want to be the one who's named, well, I wouldn't have found the doctor without you. That's what they want. They want to be recognized for that. I don't need any of that. I don't need any of that. I have a passion for people to make it. Because I know what it is to lose. And when you know what it is to lose, you wouldn't hope there would be no soul on this earth that you would want that for. If you truly saw darkness, there is not a soul on earth you would want that for. And if you truly experience the kingdom, there's not a thing on earth that you would not do so somebody else could find the kingdom. And when you knew there was space for everybody in the kingdom, you would not stay there by yourself and just enjoy it by yourself. You say, nope, I'm going back and I'm going to tell everybody. There's room for everybody here. See, when you know you're unworthy of something and the Lord bestows it upon you anyway, and then you realize that other people can have that same thing, your mission begins. You're not going to sit still until you tell someone that everything they were hoping for and everything they wanted and their true heart's desires can be fulfilled. You're going to go tell them. You don't care what it costs you. Because you know that even if you don't, you're going to go back to that kingdom. And whatever the price is, you don't care. Because guess what? The price you pay in the flesh can never amount to the joy another will have when they find that kingdom. But you have to find it first. You cannot lead a person to a place you have never been. You can encourage a person to walk with you on the way. But if you've not been there, your passion is going to be missing. Right? If you're not delivered all the way, then you're going to have doubts about what you're saying to somebody else. But when you've been delivered and when you've stepped foot in the kingdom, nobody can discourage you from what you're doing. Nobody will discourage you. And with all passion, giving up all you must give up, you'll do it without complaining. See, that's one of the key things. Listen to me, folks. When you never hear a person complain in public or in private, they have found something. People who complain are missing something. Those who don't complain have found something. It doesn't matter what you complain about. When you hear a person not complaining, they have found something. They have truly found it. There is no complaint in the heart of a person who has found the kingdom of the living God. There is a complaint in the person who has not found it, because their faith is often tried. They have to reach and stretch to keep that faith going. Once you found the kingdom, you have seen it. You absolutely believe it. And no one can tamper with your faith in that regard. So you be quite passionate about it. All you have to do is listen to a person's complaints. If they have a lot of them, how then could they have found the kingdom? How can they act like everything's a lost cause when they know better? If you've seen the kingdom, you know that everything is by no means a lost cause. You know that every day is an opportunity. That every day is full of light. Inside that saint and inside that kingdom, that kingdom will never be in darkness. It's like going on a trip, right? If you're going on a trip to your beautiful house, but you stop by a store that's in one of the rooms of a beat down house, you're not going to cry when you walk into that store and say, oh, this house is so beat down. Why? Because that's not your house. You know where your house is. Oh, and by the way, when you step in there, because you have such a nice house that you're on your way to because you're a passersby, you're going to stop and say, hey, is there anything I can do for you to help you fix up your house? You'll lend your time and everything else. Why? Because you're going to all security, which is your house. That's what happens when you find the kingdom. You don't complain about things. You lend a hand. You offer assistance. You do so willingly, not grudgingly. You don't walk around like Charlie Brown saying all is lost, because you know all is not lost. Oh, I tell you, these things are going to be important when you meet the others. I mean, look, I hate to tell you, but I'm telling you, a lot of people are about to meet the others. They're not going to like it. It's going to mess up. It's going to be a challenge for the very best of us. It'll be a challenge because it's going to seem like people are so drawn to these other things outside of everybody's power. It'll try us. Because many are going to go straight to them and follow them, as they do now. Most of the world right now is following them already. And they're trying to tell people that even the Pentagon is trying to tell people, hey, this stuff is real. It's 100% real. And even we don't know what to do with all of it. But like I said, you're going to find out about the agreements, about the bodies. It's so funny because all the officers, most of the officers that were involved in Roswell said the same consistent thing. The officers, not the enlisted, the officers, those who were in charge. They said the same consistent thing. They pointed out the liars. They told people that they were under a gag order. They didn't agree with it. They told people about what they found and what they had and what was shipped where. They showed video. They had real footage on the internet for about a month of bodies. And it was authentic. And it was so authentic that nobody paid attention to it. That was the funny part. That was so funny, it was authentic. It was a real deal. Because people cannot categorize that in their encyclopedias. What do you think they mingle their seed with the seed of men for? They do that for the sake of flesh bodies, that they may inhabit and do things in this plane of existence. Otherwise, they couldn't do anything in this plane of existence. So they have to do what they do with flesh. That means they made themselves bodies. They know all about the human body. They know how to re-engineer both the human body and animals. They know all about it. They're masters of technology. They know how to use every element on the face of the earth. They know all the sciences plus some. So they know how to manipulate all the materials in creation. But they can only manipulate the materials. Remember something, God commands his creation. They can only manipulate it, but God commands it. And with the foolish things of this world, he is going to confound the wise. Like the wise right now, they really believe that somehow an army that's bigger than they are is what it's going to take to defeat them. When we all know that bugs can easily defeat humanity. You ever heard of pestilence? You'll be well acquainted with that in the times to come. Look at COVID-19. You want to know the truth? They spent some serious money on COVID-19. Nobody wants to believe the facts about COVID-19. COVID-19 is not new. It's been out for a long time. But even back then, people didn't want the vaccinations for it. Some military personnel had to take it because they travel abroad. People have had the COVID-19 vaccination. They didn't even know it. They've been running around with it for 29 years, and they didn't even know it. 29 years. They've already had the vaccination that they're just giving people now. 29 years. They're still living the exact same formula. I don't discuss such things because you have such opposition to things that nobody can ever truly find out. You have your crowd that's going to dispute it and your other crowd that's going to advocate it. But neither one have a laboratory. They all say they're qualified, and all of them have contradicting stories. But I believe the Lord is in charge of my life. I've taken things like PB pills. You guys remember those? PB pills? How many of you took those PB pills and you bled out of your eyeballs and ears after you took them? That was an experimental pill to give you a dose of a nerve agent so that if you were ever exposed to a nerve agent, you really wouldn't catch it. We took these things every day. I was one of those who bled out of the eyes and the ears and the nostrils and the mouth. But I'm still here. They said for sure that stuff's going to kill you. Well, it didn't kill me. What happened? I've taken worse things, experimental things. We call them peanut butter shots, and they go right in the caboose. Because it feels like a big wad of peanut butter on your buttocks, right? Nobody knew what was in that. There were even papers sometimes we had to sign saying we wouldn't say anything about it. Most of those soldiers have 2 years missing in their medical records. There's no accountability of 2 years of their medical records. Gone. They're still here. You're going to hear all sorts of nutball stories, and what I'm telling you is this: you better trust your Lord in heaven. Be careful of men, especially those who operate by fear. No good will come of a person operating by fear. God did not give us the spirit of fear. So then if a person is doing things by way of fear, how can any good come of that when God did not give us the spirit of fear? We don't operate by the spirit of fear. And you know what the opposite of a mind that operates by the spirit of fear is? A sound mind. That means you're a lunatic if you're operating by the spirit of fear. That's chaos. That's what that is, chaos. But when you don't operate by the spirit of fear, in the Bible, it is said that you're operating by a soundness, by a sound mind. That means you have your faculties together, right? You're not crazy. You're operating in soberness and sobriety. Otherwise, if you operate by fear, you're in chaos. Don't fear. What did Jesus say? Jesus said, don't fear what man can do to you. Fear the one that can kill both the body and the soul. Stop fearing mankind and all of what you think they can do. They don't want to kill you. They could have killed us along. Why? It really gets me, right? If somebody were evil and they wanted to really kill you, right? How many of you like Limburger cheese? I don't like Limburger cheese, right? That would be like someone putting the poison in Limburger cheese, knowing I'm not going to eat it. That would be the dumbest criminal you would ever meet. That's dumb. Why would you put the poison in something that nobody's going to take? If you really wanted to get someone, wouldn't you put it in something they're already taking? And wouldn't you split up the ingredients, like put some in the milk and some of the beans and some of the bread, knowing that they're going to put a meal together? And then that would be the kicker? Not put it all in one thing that nobody wants to take. That's bogus. I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but I'm just telling you. I'm just telling you something. That would be the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life if somebody ever did that. Do vaccines have side effects? Of course they do. Everything man makes has, a hamburger has side effects. Don't they? French fries have side effects. Candy has side effects. We have to operate by soundness. I tell you, these are the days when people are going to be lost.